Hi, Lahiru.
Hi, Nitish.
Lahiru, can you hear me?
Yes, Nitish. Am I
All
audible?
right. Yeah, yeah. You
Got it.
can present your screen. We'll
Got it.
give the others a few minutes to join.
All right. Got it.
Lahiru.
Hi, Nitish.
Hi, Lahiru. Shall we begin?
Yes, we may.
Yeah, I'll just give
Hello.
you an intro.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining the fourth session of our new Tech Talk series, the Podium. This particular session is going to be packed with knowledge about cybersecurity and zero trust. Crucial topic these days with everyone switching to online means of working, increasing the rate of remote working, and exposing organizations to more threats online. Your speaker for this exclusive session is an industry enthusiast and expert, Lahiru Hewawasam. Lahiru holds a Beng Computer Networks and Security from APIIT, Staffordshire University, an MSc in Information Technology specializing in cybersecurity from SLIIT, and is also certified in API security, digital forensics, web application security, and DevSecOps. The particular session will touch points on the traditional security model, why the traditional security model is ineffective, what is zero trust, capabilities of zero trust, high-level architecture of zero trust in practice, benefits of zero trust maturity model, threats associated with zero trust architecture, and migrating to a zero trust architecture. So Lahiru, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Nitish. Just a final check. Nitish, is my screen visible?
Yeah, can see your screen and can see you also.
Thank you very much, Nitish. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Without further ado, let's start. So today I'll be going through the hot topic, zero trust, right? So, and how zero trust can improve your organization's cybersecurity posture. So in this session, we'll cover what the traditional security model is, why it's ineffective at the moment, what zero trust is, and what the benefits are. Also, the capabilities of zero trust, the high-level architecture. We'll look at how zero trust can be implemented in practice in an organization, the zero trust maturity model, also how you can take your existing controls and migrate to a zero trust architecture. Also, of course, uh, threats associated with the zero trust architecture. So first, we'll look at what the traditional security model is. Now, the traditional security model of an organization used to be perimeter based and had predefined boundaries and focused its strength on securing the perimeter. So if you take a look at the diagram to your right hand corner, you'll see that the perimeter is clearly defined in blue, right? And anything inside the perimeter is considered to be trusted. So no matter what you are or who you are considered trusted. So this also applies to the devices that you use. So anyone can go and connect your personal device to your local LAN network, and then it'll get authorized as uh, as a legitimate device, and then you will be given access. Same with, excuse me, same with your credentials. So here, uh, the trust uh, is based on the location, and anyone who's outside the trusted zones are considered untrusted and not allowed access into the uh, corporate network, unless other than they connect through a VPN. So why is this security model not effective at the moment? Now, if you take a look at the diagram that you have towards the right-hand corner or the right-hand side, you see that company XYZ has a lot of entities connecting to it. Now, a company XYZ has multi-tenant cloud platforms. So currently they're running Azure and AWS. They've given access for their employees using mobile phones, and they've also allowed the remote workforce or working from home concept, considering the current situation that's going on in the country and the world. The company also has its vendors connecting to them, right? From third-party vendors, they connect to maintain their systems or implement new systems, so on and so forth. Also, sometimes companies can also be a part of a bigger group or a hub, basically. So in this instance, you can see three other different companies connecting to this main company XYZ. So in this case, where do you set the boundary? I mean, like, you can't really set a predefined boundary because your mobile workforce is connecting from home, your vendors are connecting from their network, your servers are running on Azure, AWS, hybrid environments, on-premise, you know. So in the modern environment or the enterprise, there cannot be any perimeter as such. So this is where the traditional security model fails because there's no perimeter to be defined and there's no perimeter security as such. So this is where zero trust comes in. Now, zero trust is basically moving the defenses from being a static and network-based perimeter approach to not implicitly granting access or trusting any entity that connects, even though it is a legitimate entity. So the basis of zero trust is always verify, never trust. So what that's saying is nothing but, always check for authenticity and for all the other conditions that needs to be met. And if only those conditions are met, grant access, and the access that is granted should also be only to a specific resource. Uh, this resource can be a server, data, or maybe a network device uh, as such. So um, that's how the basis of zero trust is established in an organization. Now, what are the benefits of implementing zero trust in the first place? So zero trust lets you secure your business and business operations. It helps you adhere to regulations with stringent controls. So if you were to implement ISO or PCI or any other regulation that has strict regulations in access control and as such, Zero Trust is a very good starting point for everyone because it covers mostly all the controls that are necessary for these regulations to uh, for these regulations. It also enables employees to have seamless and secure access from anywhere, uh, managing risks that are brought by complex technology environments. It also allows businesses to use innovative technologies. So this is a key term in the cyber or in the IT industry because everyone is looking to get an edge over, have an edge over the other competitors. So this can be by using advanced data analytics or machine learning or cloud platforms, new cloud service providers as such. Now, using these will bring a lot of uh, advantages to the business. Also, it will also bring, a lot of risks. So mitigating these risks must be the key focus as a part of the security team or the IT team, and also the consumers of the technology. So Zero Trust is also a very good fit for anyone who's willing to use new technology for their business. So that will keep the risks down. Also, it reduces the complexity and cost for security controls. Since now we'll cover this later down the slides or the session. So Zero Trust actually splits up the security controls into 5 different pillars. And then from there, you can segregate the security controls so that you don't end up buying 2 different solutions to do the same task. And then managing it also will be very easy because it's centrally managed. So what are the principles of Zero Trust? Like I said, number 1 is never trust, always verify. So which is always verifying an identity and only granting access after it has been authenticated or validated. Then we have making decisions based on transaction risk without granting trust-based permission solely based on the network location. So which means even though you're connected to the LAN or the company's wireless networks, you will not be given access just because you're connected. So your device, your identity, and your all the other components must go through a set of checks and policies before you are granted access to this specific resource. Third is log and monitor. So logging and monitoring is an essential part of any security architecture. So this gives you an idea of what is going on and the necessary information to react to these incidents before they take place, or actually predict when they are going to happen. That's an advanced way of advanced section that we're going to talk about later. Fourth, we have microsegmentation. So microsegmentation is nothing but splitting up different business operations or systems in their own separate silos. So you might have a traditional network that has a user range, a server range, or database range, or something like that. But if a server within the server range is compromised, the attackers will have the capability of uh, migrating or shifting to another server within the same range. But if you implement microsegmentation, the attackers will not be able to move to a different application or attack a different application, since this application itself is a different entity considering the entire network and the scope that it operates in. So that is a way of containing or containing security threats within a zero trust architecture, and also applying automation and orchestration. So automation and orchestration is a key part in the zero trust architecture, because it allows you as a security professional to actually automate routine security tasks and improve consistency of these executions, so that your analysts and other resources are free to do other tasks rather than doing the same mundane tasks all the time. So those five are the zero trust principles, and these will be repeated all throughout the architecture in the different pillars that I'm gonna go through now. So I would like to call this the capabilities of zero trust, but they're basically the five pillars that zero trust is split into. So if you can see, the first pillar we have is identity. So which talks about securing your identity across the organization. Then you have the device. It's basically securing your device uh, and applying security controls to the device that you're connecting from and to. Next, we have network, that is protecting your network, application workload or the application itself, and we have data. So all these five pillars combined will be the foundation of zero trust. But we have three other components here. So we have visibility and analytics at the bottom, automation and orchestration, and governance. So these three components of the zero trust architecture stretches across all five different pillars. So which means that visibility and analytics must be applied through all five pillars, including identity, device, network, application, and data. Same goes for automation and orchestration and governance as well. So now we'll be going into each different component or capability, and then we'll look at what sort of security control we can actually implement to provide this functionality. So first we have securing identities. That is basically the first pillar that we spoke about. The security controls that you can implement here are identity management, authentication controls, conditional access, and threat detection. So threat detection and conditional access might go hand in hand in some cases. However, they need to be separate from each other and be able to handle different use cases as and when the users are logging in. Now, the second pillar is securing devices. So this is where your endpoint security, this can be an EDR, XDR, or your traditional antivirus solutions. We can have device identity and management solutions, IoT and OT security. So this is another component that has been added to the enterprise network. So we see a lot of IoT devices that are working parallelly with the other OT devices. So we need to consider the IoT security as well. So we have device security as a whole and device monitoring and log management. So again, monitoring the logs of these devices and also having a centralized location is crucial. Next, we have securing networks. Now, we may have not completely eliminated the network perimeter, but if we do have something of uh, like a on-premise data center or maybe a cloud data center, so they'll all have their own little perimeters. So what we're going to talk about now is network perimeter security for all these different networks. So if you have a network, you'll be focusing on that particular entity and that particular perimeter security. So that's the basis of network perimeter security. So you have the secure remote access. So the remote workforce is one of the key topics that we're going to talk about. Like we always hear these days because of COVID and the country situation, and we all work from home, right? So in these cases, you need to find a secure way of connecting back to the uh, enterprise or the organization. So traditionally, we used to use VPN, but VPN lacks some controls that we need in the zero trust architecture. Some solutions may have it, but there are dedicated solutions that you can use to actually have zero secure remote access. We have network access control, while connecting remote is also important. Network access control makes sure that all the physically connected or locally connected devices are managed accordingly. Data center or cloud network access security. So while connecting to the data center or the clouds, you need to consider that sort of security, and then you need to provide solutions accordingly as well. Now, the next pillar is securing applications. So we need to consider application security, secure cloud access, secure configuration and patch management. Now, the third point, secure configuration and patch management is a crucial step where most of the vulnerabilities and threats lie. You need to make sure that you don't deploy default configurations or, like basically harden the configuration while the application is deployed, and also keep the application and operating systems up to date by installing the latest patches. And then we have isolation and we have container security. Why I've added container security here is mostly all the applications that are built right now don't necessarily follow the traditional deployment methods. They either go serverless or container based. So even though you choose serverless or container based, both go hand in hand. So the configuration again needs to be secured, and as for containers, you need to improve your container security and container hardening as well. So the next step is securing data. So for this, you can introduce data security controls, data access governance solutions, certificate and key management solutions, encryption and obfuscation of data in transit and at rest, data loss prevention solutions. So again, you need to make sure that your data is not leaking out, even though it's at rest, in motion, or in use. Also, data retention and destruction solutions. So make sure that all the data is controlled and handled properly from collection all the way up to destruction. So governance will also play a major role in these stages. Next, we have visibility and analytics, which stretches across all 5 different pillars. So here we have data collection that we spoke about, collecting all the logs, telemetry, metrics, and all that, and then putting it into a centralized log collection or an SIEM. Next, we use threat intelligence to enrich the data within the SIEM And then we have our security operations or security operations center, the analysts, to actually look at these alerts and to take necessary actions against these alerts. So talking about automation and orchestration that we can actually integrate into our zero trust architecture. We can integrate them into the infrastructure and deployment parts of the architecture. So if you're deploying a new server without doing it manually, you can also do it via a infrastructure as a code platform or an automation service such as Pulumi, Ansible, Puppet, and Terraform. Right? Also, we have threat and vulnerability management. This needs to be done on a regular basis, and using tools that are compatible with automation and orchestration helps the organization integrate this aspect into into their zero trust architecture. So that inadvertently improves their security and IT operations. Now we will take a look at the zero trust architecture on a high level. So if you look at this architecture, so you'll be able to notice the 5 pillars that we just spoke about. They are identities, devices, data, applications, and then we have infrastructure and network that were either combined previously. So all these 5 pillars are governed by the security policy enforcement or policy administrator. So this is a centralized location where we can where we can deploy all our zero trust policies across all the pillars. So if you start from the left, you'll have your identities. And then from there, you'll have your multi-factor authentication control coming in. You have your user risk and session risk detection. And then you have an identity provider. So those policies are governed by the policy administrator and or the security policy enforcement mechanism. Next, you have devices. So with the devices pillar, you will have your device risk and compliance mechanisms or controls to check that. You have your device identity, and also you have your device inventory, helping out the other controls identify whether this is a corporate device or an unmanaged device. Next, we have data towards the right hand top right corner. This actually looks at classifying, labeling, and encrypting data. This can be emails or documents, and also structured data. So this can be your databases, your files, your emails. So information that you are using on a daily basis. Next, you have applications. So these can be SaaS-based applications or on-premise based applications. So as for SaaS-based applications, the adaptive access can be implemented by using a CASB. So that's the control that we're using to implement that. As for infrastructure and network, we have all our containers, serverless, your internal servers, infrastructure as a service platform as service. So all those infrastructure, along with the network delivery and internal microsegmentation, is protected by threat management and access controls, right? So it's important to note that the central enforcement component also uses threat intelligence to correlate or to enrich the signals that are uh, generated from these tools, such as the multi-factor authentication tool or the network access, microsegmentation to solution. So all that. So once you bring visibility and analytics into the picture, you are able to understand the risks that are faced by an identity as a individual or the entire life cycle of a user trying to access some sort of resource. So once you have that visibility and analytics in place, you can move to automating the responses that the security tools must take once they detect a threat or an anomaly. So now that we've covered the basic set of principles, the high level architecture, we look at how this works in practice. So in this example, I'll be taking the example of using the user trying to access an application or a document. So starting from the left corner, so you see identities. So once we sign in using the credentials, so it checks if you are using a strong authentication, using multi-factor authentication as well. Then alongside, it will also check the device compliance. So if those two criteria are uh, okay or being verified, then it will move to the next step of granting access through the traffic filtering and segmentation side of the network. Now, it will use traffic filtering to justify what or to identify what traffic you're trying to, what traffic you're generating. And also, it will grant access based on the policies that the Zero Trust policy central management has. Now, from here, once the user authenticates, it'll jump into the network segment. So from there, it'll gain public or private access to the necessary resources. If I am going to, if the user is going to access the data, it'll have to go through the classification, and then it'll check if the classification is appropriately done. And if the user is allowed to access this document, from there, it'll grant the access to the user. So again, in the application access, it'll use adaptive access to restrict or to grant access to a specific application. So as you can see here, threat intelligence and telemetry is being used at every step of the way to enrich the data and to also identify anonymous, like suspicious activity, and also to perform automated responses. So which is in the threat protection bucket here. So the policy optimization that we see here talks about continually fine-tuning these policies according to the business use case and also according to governance and compliance needs. So that is something that needs to be done regularly and continuously in order to keep up with the changing environment within the business. So the next step is the next topic that I'll be talking about is the Zero Trust maturity model. Now, Zero Trust, it's important to note that Zero Trust cannot be implemented by using a single solution. It's multiple solutions and techniques put together that build the Zero Trust architecture. So in the Zero Trust maturity model, we have three distinct stages. First stage is the foundation of the getting started stage. Next, we have advanced, then we have optimal or the most mature stage. So if anyone is keen on implementing Zero Trust, now, by all means, this is not a complete guide. The complete guide is actually available under the within the link that I've listed down, listed below. So these 3 or 4 activities can be considered as a stepping stone to implementing Zero Trust. So at the first stage, you would look into implementing multi-factor authentication or single sign-on to all your cloud applications. Doing this will give you visibility into the cloud environment and also give you more control over the access that is granted. So next point that you have to ask is, do you have visibility into the device compliance? Now, the device compliance can vary from organization to organization, but a basic example is your device up to date? Is your device joined to the domain? Does your device have a virus guard or an antivirus solution? Is that up to date? Is it working accordingly? Are you a part of a group? So group that is allowed to access remotely or something like that. So those are the device compliances or device postures that will be checked during the user during the connection, the initial connection that is made by the user. And also, it's important to note that this is not something that is checked one time, and that the device and the user's posture is checked continuously. So whenever the compliance degrades, the user is no longer able to access the system resources, as they will introduce a security risk into the organization. So the next point that we need to ask ourselves is that, are we segmenting our networks to prevent lateral movement? So that's something very important, and this is where micro segmentation comes in. So now that after you going through the first stage, you can move on to the next advanced stage. So are you using real-time risk analytics to assess user behavior or device health? Are you correlating security signals across the multiple pillars that we just spoke about? The device, identity, data, application, and uh, network. Are you proactively finding and fixing vulnerabilities or misconfigurations? So this is where the threat and vulnerability management comes into place. So after going through all that regularly, then you can move on to the mature stage. So you can call yourself a mature, like you can call yourself, you can say that you have a mature model of zero trust if you fit into these criteria. Are you able to dynamically enforce policies? So it doesn't matter if you detect the device compliance has degraded, but what are you going to do with it? How do you enforce policies against that compliance? Do you have automated threat detection and response across all pillars? Do you have automated healing capabilities built into the zero trust model? So once you complete all this, then you can move on from one stage to another in order to achieve complete zero trust architecture. So just a reminder that a complete list is available from Microsoft. So it's actually quite comprehensive, and it splits it into the different pillars as well. So that might be helpful when you're trying to evaluate your journey within Zero Trust. Next, I would like to talk to you about migrating to a Zero Trust architecture and how you can do that. So there are two different architecture deployment models, which is the first one is a pure Zero Trust architecture. So which is nothing but building Zero Trust from the ground up. So this practice is actually not feasible for organizations that are currently running any applications or any other existing organizations, basically, because you can't really take out the entire legacy system and then put in something completely new. You'll need to continue running your legacy like systems and operations. So this is where the hybrid zero trust architecture comes into place. This adds to the existing environment, makes sure that you go through multiple technology refresh cycles. Like I said, zero trust is not a single solution. It's multiple technologies put together to build an architecture. Also, it allows you to run both legacy and zero trust architecture components simultaneously. So this is in the case that you run the first refresh cycle, you introduce, let's say, endpoint protection or identity management. But then you have your legacy systems running underneath. And then from there, the more refresh cycles you go through, the more zero trust components you can add. And then finally, one day, you can get rid of all the legacy components and then move along with the complete zero trust architecture. So this is how you actually go about implementing the hybrid zero trust architecture. First, we have the prepare stage. So within prepare, it's actually doing a self-assessment and getting the system inventory done correctly, user inventory, and business process reviews. So this is important to identify all the assets that you have within the organization. And from there, you can categorize and select different processors, applications or network segments that can be moved to a zero trust architecture. So during the selection phase, you can do risk assessments and do policy developments. During the implementation and assessing phase, you can do the policy deployment. From there, you authorize and grant access based on the certain set of criteria that you've already defined within your policies. From there, you deploy to roll out the operations, and then you continuously monitor and improve the policy based on the changes that you make to the environment, or just basically fine tuning your policy and only allowing what is necessary to be allowed. So that's how you go about implementing zero trust using the hybrid zero trust architecture model. So next, we'll talk about the threats associated with zero trust or implementing zero trust. So as I mentioned earlier, there can be a central policy management component. Now, they may be referred to in different terms or different terminologies, but in this case, I'll take the terms policy engine and policy administrator. So these two components uh, dictate what communications take place. So unless authorized, no communication will take place within the network or in between the components of the network. So one server will not be able to communicate to the other without the necessary authorization. Now, if these components are compromised in some way, this can have a fatal repercussion on the organization. So actors may perform unauthorized changes and then allow devices that would not be allowed otherwise allowed. So doing so, attackers may be able to uh, log in or allow devices to further compromise the network. And another risk that we have with the zero trust network is human error. So mistakes during configuration can have fatal repercussions. So one mismanaged policy or misconfigured policy or one simple mistake can bring down a network. So in order to mitigate these, we can harden the configuration for the policy management components and all the other components as well, and implement adequate monitoring to track all the changes that are made to each component. Also, we can audit all activities regularly, since audits bring out a lot of, lets you ask a lot of questions regarding the processes as well. The next risk or threat that we have is denial of service or network disruption. So this is not unique to a zero trust architecture. However, this can also have an impact during the implementation or within the zero trust network or architecture. So any disruption to the network components and the policy administrators will not, will render the network components unusable, and no communication will take place unless the policy administrator gives them permission. Now, any disruption to the connection will cause the policies not to be rolled out and the devices not connect the devices render the devices unreachable. So a mitigation strategy that we can take is ensure that all the components are secured. Now, if you are hosting the controllers or the policy management configuration, like components on premise, make sure that they are replicated and you have a DR or BCP plan for that. And if you can, host them on a cloud so that they have multi-geolocation replications. So that's also something that you can take. However, implementing these mitigation strategies might still leave a residual risk for this particular threat. Now, this residual risk is nothing but, like large botnets still can render your entire business, or you at least impact a limited number of users due to their significant size. And if you're talking about hosting your controllers on the cloud, it's also important to note that cloud platforms also do have outages. So make sure that you do have the replications put in place. Otherwise, if the cloud provider or cloud platform goes down, or the cloud provider data center goes down, then you are left helpless. So the next is stolen credentials or insider threat. Now, credentials are still a thing in the zero trust network or architecture. Users still use credentials within the zero trust architecture. So you still need to protect your credentials, and attackers with unauthorized access can gain unauthorized access to the uh, resources. But we do have a certain set of restrictions within the zero trust network compared to a traditional security architecture. Also, one of the best ways of one of the most common ways of gaining credentials is by phishing or other social engineering attacks. A mitigation strategy for this would be implementing multi-factor authentication. Now, like I said, the zero trust network also comes with different controls or additional controls, including multi-factor authentication, but we do have device posture checks, and also we only allow explicit access to resources. So even if even if an attacker gains valid credentials, he will also need to find a device that matches the posture checks and passes the posture checks of the organization, so which is very highly unlikely. Now, visibility on the network is another risk that or threat that we might have. Now, some smaller organizations might not have the capability of analyzing all the network traffic that goes through the network. Some might be encrypted. So in this case, organizations might not know where the traffic is originating from. These might be non-enterprise owned assets because they have bypassed their posture checks. So in this case, the mitigation strategy would be to implement deep packet inspection and also try to examine the encrypted traffic. And alternative mitigation, let's say you can't encrypt or you can't examine the encrypted traffic, you can always go and collect the metadata of the encrypted traffic, so the source and destination addresses, and then use advanced machine learning techniques to detect traffic flow abnormalities. So this is another way of detecting threats or malicious actors that are residing within your network. So those are the threats that come along with implementing zero trust. Some of them can be mapped to a traditional architecture as well, or a everyday network, but these also reside within the zero trust architecture. Now, the key takeaways for our session is never trust, always verify. That's the basic and the foundation of zero trust. Never allow explicit access. Uh, Zero trust cannot be achieved with a single solution. So that everyone needs to keep in mind that zero trust is a set of solutions and techniques, not a single solution. And any organization will need to go through the zero trust maturity model in order to fulfill their zero trust journey. So you start from the foundation and then go up to the mature stages. I've also listed down two materials or reading materials that will help you have a better understanding of zero trust. They're from NIST and Microsoft. They explain uh, this concept to a far greater depth than covered during this session. So they are also available for free. You can download and go through these documents. And that wraps up our session for today. And I would like to open the forum for any questions and questions that you might have regarding the topic, and I'll be glad to answer all the questions.
Thank you, Lahiru. Thank you for that insightful session. Like Lahiru mentioned, if you guys have any questions, you can raise your hand on the reactions tab at the top, and I'll let you guys speak. I'll unmute your mics. Seems like it's all clear, Lahiru. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. So thank you very much for joining. Like everyone, thank you very much for joining. I hope that everyone's staying safe. And we'll see you at the next session. Thank you very much, Nitish, and for organizing this.
Thank you, Lahiru. Thank you so much for taking the time to do the session. And thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully we'll see you again in the next session. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.